Greetings. Welcome to the Dragon Con Urban Fantasy Track discussion of Reginald the Vampire, which I will just say from the outset, I think it was a shame that it flew under the radar the way it did. I thought it's a very underrated show, and we're going to have fun talking about it tonight. And I have some great folks with me here to do so, so I am going to let them introduce themselves, beginning with you, Marks.
Oh, hey, I'm Mark Spile. I'm a author, podcaster, indie filmmaker, and yeah, I love everything urban fantasy. I write some urban fantasy, and I love watching urban fantasy. So,
and I know I've done this the last time you were on a panel too. I'm pretty sure that Marks holds the record for the number of virtual media fan panels. Me that you've been on more of them than anyone else. I'm not sure what your prize is, but one thing you do have is my eternal gratitude. So thank you.
And he's great in all of them.
oh,
What's that?
I said he's great in all of them.
He is. So that's one reason he keeps coming back too, because anyway, I do appreciate it, but you have definitely earned that spot. That's for sure.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Anna.
I am Anna Puerta. I am a volunteer on the Urban Fantasy Track for Dragon Con, and I'm a human.
A very tired one. What's that?
Yes, a tired one.
That's very tired at this point in time. Okay, yeah. we all get that. And Rocky
Shields, fan of the show and a fan of the track, and pretty much watch everything sci-fi fantasy. So really loved the shows and sad it was canceled.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, we can. Does everybody have tissues? I have a tissue over here, but I don't know how that would work virtually for everyone else. But yeah, I do think, and we will talk about some, what we would have seen as a potential season 3, like what would we have expected there to be. But I do think that the show probably got hurt by the fact that the writer's strike and actor strike came in, all of that happened, as I recall, right in between the two seasons. And I don't know, a lot of times when something is disrupted like that, it makes it more difficult. But in any case, I really enjoyed it. It was something that for me, I watched the first episode and I said, yes, it's definitely urban fantasy, so that belongs on this track. Luckily, the people or the person who actually makes that final decision agreed with me, so then it was assigned to our track. But then when I had like 7 other things to watch, and Anna said, oh, well, I can do that one. I said, okay. And so I saved all the episodes. I recorded every single one and saved them. And so, which I was, very glad of at this point in time, even though I do have Peacock, which is what they're on, which they're streaming on now. But it was nice to, have them. But in any case, I think the first thing I'd like to talk about is the character development on this show. I think that that's something that they excelled at, and that not just character development, but showing the evolution of them. They didn't do like info dumps where you found out, like they're trying to tell you about these people. But I thought that they had some believable evolution throughout the course of the 2 seasons as well. And so my question for you guys is, who was your favorite character? And is it the same one? Did you end up having the same favorite character throughout the whole show, or did that change? And then this could be the same one, or it might be someone different. Which character do you feel had the best evolution arc, or showed the best development as it moved along throughout the series? And Marks, you get to go first.
Favorite character is really tough. I think I kept bouncing between Reginald and Maurice, sort of. They're just kind of two different sides of a vampire, I guess.
Right. Good point.
And they both did grow. Reginald, of course, was growing and power, I guess. He got a power upgrades occasionally with magic and and stopping time and all that good stuff. In his relationship with Sarah, I think the most one that I do want to mention though with the arcs, all the arcs are great, like you said. I think that's their strength, especially in season 2. But the one that surprised me the most, the one that really surprised me was Todd. So,
Oh yeah,
would never expected in season 1 where Todd would end up landing over time. So
right.
that was a great strength of the show. So in season 2, I really felt like that the whole ensemble really came together.
Yeah, Todd went from being the one that you most wanted to smack, to being someone that you thought, I could hang out with this guy, or at least have a cup of coffee or a drink or something,
Mm-hmm.
Anna?
Favorite is hard. I think I'm just gonna go with Reginald because I do love that guy.
Yeah.
He's so funny and what's the word?
Sincere.
He's a very human vampire. How he's relatable. He's yes. Enjoyable to watch. I think for character arc, although I do agree about Todd, I think I'm going to say Claire.
Mm-hmm.
Claire's arc, I mean, she was kind of just this kid that was hanging around at the beginning, and she turned into a very powerful young woman. And I really enjoyed that that arc for her.
Okay. All right, Rocky.
For me, it's Maurice. He was always my favorite in the books, and I thought the actor that played him, Mario Pebbles, I thought he did a great job with the role and made it his own. And just him and Angela together, I loved all their scenes together. And but Claire would be second. Episode 4 in season 2 was by far my favorite episode, and it was just so emotional. That was one you need tissues for with that whole storyline in that episode. But Todd, to me, had from season 1 to season 2 had the most character growth because I disliked him so much in season 1, and you said, you rooted for him in season 2 with him and Mike.
Right. And he was, there was something different about him in terms of being a bit more joyful once he figured out how he could be himself. And and when it comes to Todd, I wonder if it had to do with the fact that he found out that the world was a whole lot bigger than he had originally thought. And that kind of made him, it kind of freed him up a little bit to be a little more of who he really was rather than who he thought he needed to be or he was expected to be or whatever.
Being last summer, since I saw the show, at the scene with Todd and Reginald where he's like telling them about the grief stages and stuff, I thought it was just one of my favorite scenes in season 2.
Yeah. And that's funny because Reginald's like, I don't think that's not quite it. But I get the point. This is a new one. This is your version or whatever.
Yeah.
And, but the fact that he was trying.
Yeah.
And when they were playing that game, when Todd tries to get him to play the song, name the song game, or just to make him feel better, about the fact that Sarah was gone. So
I think for Todd too, there were moments in season 1 when Reginald was using him that we kind of got to see a little peek of who he would become.
No, that's true. When he was glamored.
Yeah, when he was glamored, and Reginald would kind of unload on him because he knew that he was going to forget in 2 seconds. We kind of, Todd was a good friend even then, I think sometimes he wasn't, but sometimes he was.
Yeah, well, I had just watched I just watched the finale last night, and when they were discussing how Reginald brings it up, he says, the fact that they were friends, and he said, yeah, after you stopped, or it's been fun, after you stopped fat shaming me. And then Todd pipes up and says, and then you used me as your meal plan. And then, and then Reginald said, and now we're friends. It was a pretty kind of a simple explanation for anybody who had just walked in on the show.
Yeah.
To say, what's going on here? Now, speaking of meal plans and such, what do you think of the show's depiction of vampires in general? How did you like that? And Anna, you go first this time.
I really liked it. I think one of the fun things about the vampire society, I think is what I'll use here, is the like hierarchy and the like bureaucracy that they implemented.
Right.
Was, I mean, so unnecessary but humorous. And I think, like, Logan, the insert word here.
Yeah, they called him something different every single time.
Yeah,
that was fun.
And like sort of the pompous nature of like how they picked. I mean, it's definitely a reflection on what society does to people, human people. But it was a really funny way to set it up and showcase that. I don't know if there's not really that much, like, I'm trying to think of like lore that's different. There's not too much, like,
yeah, they stuck with the staking would kill them.
Yeah,
or
the basics.
And
most of the basics are the same.
Yeah.
It's really just the structure of like how they. Yeah. I did like getting to see when Maurice went back to was it New Orleans or some where did
Was it Oakland?
It was somewhere. I thought it was, no, maybe it wasn't Portland. Where was it?
I thought it was Oakland.
I think it's Oakland, yeah.
From where his mom lived, I think is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oakland. You guys are 100% right, and my brain is just.
We're just programmed New Orleans because of Anne Rice.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like picturing the front porch, like in the front of the house, and it looked in my head like New Orleans. Anyways, but yeah, when he went back to Oakland, and there was like the sort of like room of putting together all the pieces.
Well, Vancouver can be
throughout the vampire society, and then it's like it's just a silly mess of bureaucracy. Anyways,
silly mess. Yeah, I'm looking at. Let's see. I'm looking to see where they were. I don't think I wrote down a location. It was the fourth episode of the first season, and it was called "All the Time in the World."
Mm-hmm. I might have written it down.
Yeah, it says Oakland,
1972.
Well, that's when he was turned. But when he went back to his childhood home to see his mom.
But when he went to his childhood home, that's
I think that they were it was in a different place.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I wrote it down.
Okay. I'm gonna Google. I'll Google while Rocky talks.
Anyway, now we're all wondering, where did his mom live? And poor woman didn't last long, but in the course of the story. But Rocky, what's your take?
I like the fact that when they're turned, they're basically the same. Like if you're heavy set, you're heavy set. Nothing like that changes. I've always enjoyed that. And Penelope and LeBron are like the most like the vampires in the books. So I always loved them because it was like that little piece of, hey, we're going to have in the books, like, it's the most obnoxious, pretty people are the ones that are turned. So it's
Right.
They embodied the book characters like perfectly.
Oh,
And
did they?
they probably had the least movement. Like we talked last time about Todd, others having character growth. They probably have the least character growth, but as vampires, they stayed stagnant and the same. So I really enjoyed that, and I liked how they used the umbrellas to protect themselves
Right.
from the sun. Don't see that too often in vampire fiction or media. So, but
Right, they try to avoid going out, but
yeah,
the umbrellas, there sure were a lot of them, weren't there?
yeah. Mike shows Todd though that one time when Todd's wanting to be turned, like, hey, he puts his hand outside the umbrella, and so I did like the fact that they at least showed that as well. But I thought they did a really good job with the vampire lore, making it their own, and very humorous.
Right.
And they seemed
did.
to like Reginald definitely seemed to like delivery people to feed on.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, that scene with he and Angela sitting at the table, and the poor delivery guy, and they've both got an arm, and the guy's just sitting there, kind of, and they're having this conversation about how they're all going to die. Anyway, it was that was a good scene, I thought. And I just to toss this in there. I'm really wondering if Savannah Baisley is in every single supernatural show on Sci-Fi, because she had a very bit role on Winona Earp, and then she was in this, and she's in Surreal Estate. So it's like I'm
surprised. Like, she's in Surreal Estate. How is she in both of these shows?
They pull a lot because they film everything in Vancouver. I'm sure they pull from that talent base.
They could be, but I thought, boy, she's, maybe they're going to tap her for, she's busy with Surreal Estate, but who knows what we'll see her in next. But anyway, Marks, you're up.
I like how they did the vampires, the politics. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like what we do in the shadows, right?
Right. The council, the whole council thing.
The Vampire Nation, the Vampire Council and stuff. So I liked those, especially like the assessment test and all that, the impossible claw and stuff.
That was hilarious. That was the worst part, the last test. I was watching this, and when that happened, I thought I was going to fall off the chair, off the couch laughing. Oh my gosh.
And I like your use of umbrellas, and also I think the big thing with them, because I started to read one of the books. I've read Johnny B. Truett's other books, but for some reason never read that book because that was like his first stuff he wrote. And one thing I noticed in both is they are really emphasize that, like, whatever your talents you have, you're locked in, and that's what your talents are. Like in the book, they make a big deal about how people would train and get physically fit before they turn, so that way they can be in the best shape of their life before they lock in, basically. And about how different talents like his mental abilities might get enhanced. And I'll have special things. It didn't play it up a whole bunch, but like Maurice seems to be faster than most other vampires. And then, of course, Reginald's got both his glamour and his intelligence. And then they mentioned how Nikki can like smell or sense or hear emotions or something like that, if I remember correctly. So that was an interesting angle that they did with the vamps. Wouldn't mind seeing some more of that. So
yeah, they did. I do agree. One of you had said that it seemed as though they took existing lore, but then put a few of their own touches in it too. And I think they pretty much have to, in order to keep, to make things seem unique, to keep people interested, that kind of thing. I think they, you can't just do a rehash of
this is the only show that's got blushies, I'm sure.
No, that was hilarious. And he had Todd gets out that tray with 6 different kinds, and it's like it's like, don't go overboard or anything. Now in season 1, in the episode, it was in the 6th episode, so just past the halfway point. This is when at the time when Nikki is trying to get Reginald to herself, or in lieu of that, share him with Sarah or whatever. And she tells Reginald that they need to protect that thing that inside of him that makes him special. And what I wanted to find out is what you guys think that may be. What did she mean by that? I mean, was it, to you, what could that have been? And Rocky, you get to go first this time.
I would say like his heart, because most of the vampires Nikki probably hung out with were pretty cold and calculating, and Reginald's probably the first one she's met that cares about others, and he's not looking out just for himself. He cares about his coworkers and everybody around him. So I'd say his heart.
Okay. Marks?
Yeah, I would say that too. He's got more humanity in him than maybe the other vampires. Lost a bit. And like similar, like Rocky said, I think he's good at bringing people together. Kind of like Buffy. Buffy was a unique Slayer because she was able to bring a team together, unlike most Slayers. So Reginald kind of brings a team of vampires and humans together, which helps a lot overcome impossible odds with angels and everything else. So
right. And we even got a Buffy shout out when Sarah was glamored and going, trying to kill him, and he's talking to Nikki, and he's like, "I'm in love with Buffy the Vampire Slayer."
Oh, that's right.
Points to the show for that too. So yeah, there were a lot of little things like that they mentioned, because how many Spider-Man, little throwouts did we get there? I thought that
should have worn my Spider-Man cap.
Yeah, the writers were excellent on the show.
Yeah. I know at least one of them did write on Winona Earp also. Alexandra Zarotny. Yeah. So, all right, Anna.
I think it's a combination of like his intelligence and his humanity. Like I think there's like another layer that just goes beyond him like caring, because I think Maurice cares about people. I mean, and we see that a lot in season 2 when he decides to be a vigilante. I think it's like the way he can kind of like figure people out and almost empathetically, and with his intelligence also be empathetic and put everything together. Like there's a little, it's a little bit more nuanced, I think.
Like he always knew when Claire was having a tough time and could intune her feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're onto something with that, Anna, because it's almost as though in his case he had this bridge between his intellect and his his compassion, whereas not everybody is able to pull that off. And the fact that he could see the whole story behind a situation or a person, and make those connections, I think, was something significant about his personality as well. And something else that I think the show did really well, and Rocky, you mentioned this earlier about the humor, and I think that this show had a lot of that. It had a lot of humor, it had a lot of heart, and yet it had some very serious things going on. And we even got a little bit of gruesome stuff now and then. I mean, there was, a fair amount of blood.
The Ural Mike scene in season 2 was pretty disturbing death scene.
Oh yeah. And all of that. Did you feel as though that there was a balance between those different aspects of the show for you? Was that, do you think that they managed to hit the right notes all of the time, or was there, is there something that stands out to you as being, oh, well, that didn't quite land the way it was supposed to, or something? Marks?
Oh, that's tough. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I can't think of any gore scenes or imbalance in the humor that really I felt like it was totally off. They did a pretty good job balancing everything. Because it's real easy to go one direction, right? Like Bondsman is on right now. I've been watching that, and that's like more gory, more
Right.
Ash versus Evil Dead kind of vibe. So I think they did a good job not going that far necessarily. I think they've been right for the show, but I don't think it was too gory. It was shocking a little bit whenever we thought he was killing Todd, for example, and that was like a dark moment, the darkest moment of all of Reginald's life, I think. So that was, I think they did a good job balancing it out overall, and that's tough to do. I think one of the few shows that ever, of course, did it better, I think, but they kind of approached was like Buffy, right? And I think there's a lot of shows. I think Wine on Earth does that, and a few other shows that try to hit that balance, and it's so hard, so tough to do. But the show came really close a lot of times. I think we mentioned episode 4 of Watch the Sunrise. That was like so reminded me of the body in many ways. And that was the episode. Like I liked it all up to them, but that episode was like, wow, this is another level that they've just reached. So
yeah, and it was interesting that we never did see her. Nobody ever showed that nobody did except for Claire, and so that had its own impact as well. The fact that you knew what she was experiencing, and and I wonder if that is kind of a shout out to Buffy in and of itself there too.
I felt like it was, they were at least thinking about the body in that part. I like the symbolism of the backpack, and then it's staying right there when she finds her, and then not leaving until the very end. So that was a great episode.
Yeah, when she gets her backpack, then her things are moving. Anna?
Yeah, I think I agree. There was a pretty good balance. I do think sometimes like it leaned a little sillier than some others, but I enjoyed that. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, Buffy, we had killer puppets and stuff.
So true.
Well, yeah, I mean, but sometimes the silly stuff could be followed by, something that was completely opposite. But but I get what you mean. Did anybody here ever used to watch Monk?
Yeah.
Monk?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That show, I mean, was fun. They, for the most part, the mysteries were good mysteries, I thought, and we enjoyed it. But every once in a while, they would have him just go way too far overboard, to where it was like, even though he had a, legitimate mental illness of if you want to call it that, and and it was something that was a real thing, but every once in a while they would just go too far in having him repeat something, like it was some kind of repetitive behavior that he would do over and over again in the same scene. I mean, not that it would show up again later, and and I didn't find this show that doing that to any degree, I thought, but
yeah, that was something with Monk when I was younger. Watching Monk would frustrate me, and I would tune it out sometimes because it was too long. But as I got older, I got more patient, and I appreciated
right. You're like, hey, that's like so and so down the street.
Yeah,
or that's
like some of those scenes, like, wow, you're really stretching this out. But okay.
Yeah, it's like it's almost as though they told him, okay, you've got 5 more minutes. You got to do something. Whatever. I don't know. Rocky?
For me, the new character, Claire's dad, Altus. He had 2 scenes in the season that, because he was an over the top character, but like he just switched. In episode 4, it was the line where I loved her, but I barely know you. and that hit me hard. And he switched like from humor to seriousness. And then in episode 9, he's making a joke, but then he says, "Hey," to I can't pronounce the name of the angel, Balstra. He tells them, "Hey, I'm her dad," and I thought that was very good writing, switching from humor to serious. So I thought they did really good with that, and I think Reginald probably had the best writing when it came from being over the top to switching to like serious. But
right. Yeah, although Reginald was pretty much always Reginald. The core of Reginald was always there.
Yeah.
He did, the way he presented himself certainly changed over time, I think. But
and for me, the humor in the slushy store was some of my favorite. Like when Todd's hearing the noises before everything goes chaos, and the girl's just asking for a slushy, like moments like that where it's funny, but then it's like, what's going on? So I thought they did those types of scenes very well with the humor.
Yeah,
I was surprised when you read the book, the slushy store doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That's
a part of the show. Yeah.
Well, those of you who have read the books will have to tell us more about that at another point. But what were you going to say, Anna?
What was I going to say?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. It was about, I was going to say Reginald, a lot of his humor like comes from a place, I think, of like trauma or, that like
self-deprecating humor.
Self-deprecating, the fat kid in class that whatever is making up for that by being funny, kind of stereotype. Not stereotype. Well, you guys know what I mean.
Yeah.
Anyways. So I think a lot of the time, a lot of that self-deprecating humor is kind of already in the balance of like, oh, that's kind of sad. That's kind of serious, but it's also funny. So I think one of the reasons that it carries so well throughout the rest of the show with that balance is because it's such a part of Reginald's personality.
True. And the show is named after him, after all.
Yeah.
So they have to kind of orbit around him to a certain degree. And Rocky, you mentioned about Altus doing the, switching back and forth pretty quickly between something that's humorous, or at least that he thinks is funny, and then becomes more serious. But that kind of plays into the way his character was kind of supposed to be as an incubus, that he was supposed to be that he was always moving, was the way they said it was about movement, that things would shift from one thing to the other. And I thought it was cool though in the finale when Claire understands that about him, after having spent some time with him, she knows that it's like, I mean, he didn't even have to really explain why he thought she would be better off spending or, really staying with Ashley and Nikki. He didn't have to, sit down and have it was a serious talk, but I mean, he didn't have to really explain it. She understood it without him having to do that. And I think that says a lot for the actor, that he was able to pull that off, to make that kind of connection. And I do have a reason for bringing him up, because my next question has to do with what he told the vampires about angels. And he said that they can't see the future. So what your greatest weapon against them is free will, because they don't know how to anticipate they can't anticipate that. Oh, and I want to make a comment. I'm not imagining things, I don't think. And I didn't go back and check it like on IMDb or anything, but I think it was a different character who played Uriel in the last episode of season 1 from the guy who played him throughout season 2. Those were 2 different actors. And I was really glad they changed him, because the guy that they ended up with, he had a few Castiel vibes going on there, but not too far down. You know what I'm saying? He was different enough that somebody wouldn't say, "Oh, he was just like that." But in any case, but the angels couldn't anticipate, what they might do next. And it turns out that actually Reginald's argument, when he first talks to Balestro in one of his dreams, and he said it, being a vampire, he said, it only makes me a monster if I act like one. And in fact, he was able to kind of, pull that out when he did the whole courtroom thing and all of that. But what did you think of that whole, that aspect of the show, in terms of how they managed to kind of get out of their situation and the whole courtroom kind of thing, which I thought was pretty ingenious, really, but also hilarious. But anyway, I think, Anna, you're up first this time. Is that right?
I don't know. So wait, the question is,
well, I'm just curious, about that whole aspect of, with the whole thing with the angels and not being able to see the future, and the fact that exerting one's free will would be the way to try to get around what they were accusing the vampires of, and what they were going to be, dissolved with, if you want to call it that. And so how did that all sit with you? Did you like the way that played out in that next to the last episode, and the whole courtroom thing and all of that?
Yeah, I did. And I felt like a really good showcase of like Reginald. Like no other vampire could have done that, Reginald's intelligence and his sort of like the way he can sort of see what other people see, and that like empathetic intelligence really was like on full showcase in that sort of courtroom scene. And I think yeah, I thought it was great.
Okay. Rocky.
I love the courtroom scene. The only thing when I originally saw it last summer was the Angela with the knife to Abraham, but then rewatching it the other day, I was like, okay, that's in character. I understand it a little bit better, but the Abraham and his father scene outside, like I guess in the courtyard, was probably one of my favorite moments of that whole sequence of the episode. I thought those two actors played off each other very well, and felt it was well paid off. But I did love Reginald's dialogue during the courtroom scenes and his arguments. But and then the scene where he's doing Angela and he's like, "You're thinking this," and she's like, "Yep." He's like, "Okay, next witness." I thought.
Yeah, it's like, you don't need to bother with me. You know what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was perfect timing and humor between them two.
Okay. Marks.
Yeah, I like the court scene. Remind me in the beginning, maybe a little bit of Q and T in the Next Generation, a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it was the snap.
Yeah. Yeah, he
but
did snap his fingers a lot. That's true.
Yeah.
Hadn't thought about that.
But yeah, I liked how it was done. I mentioned the same reasons Rocky and Anna said. I do think one of the cool aspects, like Rocky mentioned, was Balestro and Abraham relationship. There's a lot to explore there. It's kind of like, well, who's Abraham's mom then?
Right, yeah.
And I think that's something I don't think I've ever seen as a half angel, half vampire. I can't think of one example off the top of my head. So that was a really cool angle. And then their relationship, and then throwing Claire in little Merlin mention and stuff, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And as soon as they said that, like, oh yeah, duh, Merlin was half demon, right? He's supposed to be. So that all makes sense now. So I liked how all that came together and it concluded the arc. I would have liked to seen Uriel put on trial a little bit because they mentioned him, but I get why they're saving him for later. But it would have been cool if he just been like blinked him over there.
Yeah. And what did Balestro said he was flawed.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
okay. He's flawed.
Yeah, he was flawed. Well, and one of the things I just thought that whole exchange and just the idea, and then can we go somewhere more, somewhere more conducive to having a discussion, a family talk, and then they end up in like a therapy session or, like a family group therapy thing. And that was pretty funny. But one of the funny things about that whole thing was how when Balestro took the original 4 out, and then they show at the end of that segment, they show LeBron and Penelope still sitting in the courtroom going, hey, where is everybody?
Yeah.
Because we've already seen that doesn't necessarily reflect the same amount of time, when you're removing someone, but it's like, so we don't know, had they been sitting there for 2 hours while this was going on, but whatever, their reaction was priceless. So I was glad. And I was also glad, talking about those particular characters, I think that it was a good thing that they didn't get overused. They showed up every now and then. It's like when you've got the quirky characters, you don't have to necessarily overuse them. Let them, do their thing, and because you don't want people to get tired of them, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But now my next question is, what was your favorite aspect of the show? What really made you connect with it? What was that made you enjoy it and like it as much as you did? And Rocky, you get to go first.
I loved the set design and the colors that they used on the show. To me, it was one of the most unique color palettes I've seen in a TV, because a lot of sci-fi shows are darker hues, and this one was very light. I loved all the purple, especially in their uniforms. But it's just one of those things with attention deficit disorder. It really popped out to me, like how they did. And like you were talking about the courtroom scene and then the like therapy office scene, I thought everything was well done. It was not the biggest budget in the world either for this show, so I thought they did really good with what they had. And then, of course, Reginald being Asian, I thought was very good representation on a TV show. So that really stood out to me.
Okay, I hadn't even thought about that when you're talking about the colors and stuff, but you're right. Maybe that's one reason it was so pleasing, and didn't even know. I didn't even realize it. Okay,
all the slushy colors.
Yeah, the slushy flavors. Some of them I was ready to try, but it's like, come on, give me that coconut. Okay.
Yeah, I want to visit that set and drink those.
Yeah, really.
Is it my turn? I do agree about the set and such. It's very unique compared to the books, and good call for them to do that. I think it's just the relationships and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of romantic relationships there with Reginald and Sarah, but then also, and then I guess Nikki for a little bit, and then Nikki and Ashley, and Todd with Mike. I mean, they all got Maurice and Angela, and then there are also all their friendships and stuff. So it's a very, very tight ensemble cast by the time we get in season 2. And I think they did a really good job fleshing all those out. It's one thing I noticed in the book, at least the first one I've been reading. It's really just Reginald Maurice. They just mentioned Sarah once, and so that was a good call for the showrunner to kind of shift that and add that into it. So I think they just did a really good job with those relationships. And I think it's really important to anchor us to a world and story I mean, that's what kept me coming back to Buffy and Supernatural and stuff. I mean, I guess Supernatural is more the brothers, but you know what I mean. But
Right.
but definitely Buffy and Winona Earp and stuff. And I think they did a really good job. And they do, and he had an Asian character. You also had a lot of LGBT couples in this.
Right.
And I think they just did a really good, like, fleshing out all these characters and bringing them to life, making them feel real. Even no matter how much Nikki would sing her stuff and do a little musical episode. That's another thing I did appreciate too, is some of the experimentation they would do. Like when Nikki woke up and was singing, it was kind of like a pseudo musical going on.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
And then the whole weird like the elevator, the hotel thing, the tests with Abraham and such. Those are really cool, imaginative stories with cool visuals too. Even though they're on a tight budget, they did a really good job keeping that interesting and creative.
Gotcha. Anna?
Y'all stole my answers.
Oh, sorry.
Oh. Would you like to elaborate on anything?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was really the relationships and the friendships. You know, it's one of the reasons we all love Buffy is the Scooby Gang, and they definitely had their own little slushy gang going.
Okay, Buffy's been summoned. So
Yeah.
uh,
And it's, you know, I mean, the slushy shack was basically like the library. You know.
oh yeah, that's true.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of the central place where everything happened, and yeah, I
unique in
also
itself.
appreciated a lot of the locations did end up having like a real personality. Like the Slushy Shack for sure has like a personality and it's memorable. The hotel too, you know, that was Abraham's sort of central location and it had its own personality. I think they did a really good job in that way with the locations in the show.
And heaven, or the lead up to heaven.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
the gallery and yes, I agree.
The place in between, or the place in between places, was what Uriel said it was.
Toasters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll never look at toasters the same again.
Yeah.
I know, that was hilarious. It was like, and I mean, and that's even Reginald's reaction. It's like,
Yeah.
really? A toast, my toaster? And, you know, and he said my toaster. I mean, he knew that it was not just a generic toaster. And I do want to jump in and say that, yeah, well, I think one of the things that I appreciated the most was, as you guys were, all of you have mentioned it, the whole relationship issue. And I was thinking about it earlier today, that one thing that was really different about this show that I did appreciate was that once the people started coming together, you know, near at the end of last season, once they started coming together as more or less a team, that they stayed that way. They didn't try to undercut each other, and they weren't always having fights amongst each other. If they had, if there was a conflict between two people, it was realistic and it got resolved. It wasn't like it went on and, that's like, I sometimes complain about the fact that one of a romance trope that I don't appreciate in any kind of a story, whether it's a book or or media, is that people, they just don't talk to each other. So, they're at odds or whatever. But yeah, the outgrowth of that is that for me, it's okay if the people band together to fight something on the outside. But if there's always fighting between them, to me, that takes away from the story you're trying to tell. And I thought this show did a really good job of, I guess, team building exercises, if you want to call it that, And so that was something that I thought was significantly different, in terms of what you would see from, most other shows. And, especially when you don't have as much time to draw it out over. It's either, you have to resolve things quickly. We've only got 10 episodes.
I think they also did a good job of like accepting each other's flaws,
Right.
and like just accepting, Angela is going to pull a knife on somebody, and we all know that. And so
Right.
we're not going to put her in a situation, where we need her to, sweet talk somebody or whatever it is,
Right.
like they accepted the flaws, they played to each other's strengths when they could. And if they put somebody in a situation where they would, make a mistake, they were like, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't have sent you into that one, like,
yeah, not a good choice on my part. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, like when Nikki and Ashley, when Nikki broke her promise to Ashley, that could have been in some shows half a season. They would have been like apart and going, and stuff. They fixed it, and it felt real.
Yeah.
It felt like it
They
made
fixed
sense how they did
it.
it.
They, and the fact of why she did it would also have been something that Ashley would have been on board with, or would have accepted as being a valid reason. But they did work through it. And I think, as I was saying, I think that they had a lot, there were some very realistic depictions of relationships in this show, especially for a show that deals with the supernatural. And that's, why I was super impressed by this whole show. And I do want to talk about the books a little bit because at least two of you have read or are reading the books, and I want to do that after we talk about after this. So let's not bring the books quite into this question, but what I'm wondering is now when they filmed this, they didn't know they weren't getting renewed. So, and the whole time after the season 1 finale, where they picked up, where the final scene of season 1 was the opening scene of season 2, it picked right up right there. I thought, oh dang, I bet you this is gonna be on a cliffhanger, because I remembered that it didn't, when it ended, they didn't know the fate of the show. So I thought, oh, is there going to be a cliffhanger or what? Which we got to admit, the last line was pretty funny, and all of that, that whole situation. But if we'd had a season 3, now not taking what you know from the books into the account, gentlemen, but if there were a season 3, what do you think we would have seen, or what would you like to have seen? What would you have hoped it would have been about? And let's see, I'm going to go with Anna going first, because Marks and Rocky, you're going to tell us about the book. So Anna, you go first. Unless you don't want to. If you want one of them to go first.
Well, I wanted to see Maurice and Angela be a vigilante team.
Okay. Batman and Batman.
Yeah, Batman and Batman. Just get real into it.
Okay. All right.
I don't know. I want to hear what you're
about. Okay. All right. Then Marks, what do you think?
Is that a vampire turning into a bat? Is it Batman?
Oh yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. But a couple of times Reggie did call him Batman. So
yeah. I think if I would guess, there's what I would like to see and what maybe I would think they might do. I would think we know there's a vampire war, something prophesized, right? And I would like to see some cool different vampire characters pop up and try to vie for power. And then like to see Angela probably go and playing both sides or something, because I still think she would kind of have trouble not playing both sides and trying to stay loyal. But if she thinks everybody else, if it would help Maurice or something, right? But I would like to see some more martial art fights, like Nick did, and just see, and of course see what happens with Reginald and Sarah with a switcheroo thing.
Right.
I would assume Reginald's got to become a vampire again. Otherwise, you have to change the name of the show, right? So,
Right. I have a
but-
theory about that, but I'm gonna let Rocky
Oh.
answer
I wanna
first.
hear
Well, and just the pace of the first two seasons, I don't think they would have played out the switcheroo that long with Reginald and Sarah. I think maybe a couple episodes, but I agree. Maurice being my favorite character. I would just watch a show with him and Angela off doing what Anna said of doing justice in the evenings.
Yeah.
That'd be a show I'd watch as well. But
Vampire Justice, that could be
yeah.
the name. Yeah.
Yeah. But and then heck, we had Claire, Ashley, and Nikki being a family. So see how that played out. Because Claire was probably my third favorite character of the show after Reginald and Maurice. So would like to see how that played out in season 3.
Yeah, I remember in the beginning, it was in the first episode when she figures out what he is. Or no, I guess it was the second episode.
Yeah.
Right?
Second.
And she says, well, are you going to bite me? If I let you in, are you going to bite me? And he's like, I'm a vampire, not an asshole. And it was like, and he brought that up again. I mean, he said that again later, or she did back at him or something. But it was like, it was a nice little throwback. But, because there is the whole vampire war thing that would be coming up. And because of the prophecy, and that in order to, that Reginald Andres would have to die. Well, way I was interpreting that as I was thinking about it is, well, he's alive now. So that if he becomes a vampire again, he will have fulfilled that prophecy. He will have to become a vampire again in order to do whatever they need to have done. That's all I was thinking.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's good. That's smart.
So we'll see. I have no idea. I would love to talk to the showrunners at some point, and if you're the showrunner and you ever happen to see this video, please send me an email. I would really like to know, how that would play out. But I think there were, they did a good job of kind of wrapping up a number of things, but then there were a few areas that were open, and that whole vampire war and what's coming next, and all of that. And they had a perfectly good setup for a season 3, and I really do wonder if they were hurt more by the writer's strike, and they kind of backed up everything for everybody. And the actors have the whole thing, it could have ended up butting up into other plans that other people had, the network had, whatever the case may be. But I feel fortunate that we got 2 seasons out of it. But yes, both. Well, Rocky, have you read the whole series?
Yeah, and Maurice the Vampire, the prequel series.
Okay, and then Mark's is reading one of them now. So I'm really curious to hear, since we, typically we don't discuss, the original source material during a fan panel because it could be spoilery. But in this case, the show is over. The show is done. So I'm curious as to, from your perspective, what's your take on how the books and the show lined up? I mean, did you feel as though the show was a good adaptation of the books, or were they so totally different and you enjoyed both that it was okay, that they weren't that similar or whatever?
Well, I mean, with books and TV shows, and you have a budget for a TV show, I thought they did fantastic with the budget they had and the changes that they did, like the slushy shop. Because, like in the series, there's a lot more world travel, and they're gallivanting to Europe and other places. So, and with a Sci-Fi Channel budget,
right?
you probably can't really do that. But and then of course the biggest change is Sarah is like a recruit already to become a vampire, and that's one of the biggest changes. So she already knows about the whole world and everything in the books.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now, are there characters that were in the show that weren't in the books at all?
I remember in book 2, it's the angels are in it. I don't think Nikki's in the books.
No, I think Nikki might be. At least
Nikki?
I read in one of the synopses. Nikki.
Okay. Might be later then.
What about Claire?
I'm only like 40%, 50% through the first book. But the thing I noticed most is the locations. So do you remember there was a conversation? I can't remember season 2 or season 1 where Reginald's talking to Sarah and she's like, we almost never met. I got this job at this fitness equipment place, that's across the street or whatever it was, or down the block, and that would have been totally different and stuff. That's where his job is in the books.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
So a very different location. Yeah. And Maurice is like looks 19-year-old, like goth, who's got a sword he carries around. So it's a very different interpretation of the character in that way.
He's like IT too.
Yes.
IT tech.
But he has the speed. I mean, there's a lot of main points that are playing out the same way, or different locations, but they all kind of hit the same beats. But a lot less emphasis, at least from what I've read, on like any relationship with Sarah and stuff with Reginald and her, at least in the beginning. But it's just different. So, but I really like a lot of the choices they made in the series. I think they were smart choices.
Yeah.
So I wonder what Johnny Buchanan, the author, I wonder what his thoughts were about the changes. He's probably just like, give me the money.
That's right. That's by the time they get to the point where they do, when they surrender their rights, they surrender their rights. And
oh yeah, it's a big boost to his career actually when that happens.
I'm sure, yeah.
Because I've been following him and some of the other Sterling Stone people. He joined up with them with other books to co-write. He's a big indie author name in the beginning of the indie publishing industry stuff. So it's really cool to see him get that made. So
that push, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I thought that I think it's a shame. I would have loved to have had more of the show.
Yeah.
And I do think it's a shame that we didn't get that, but especially that it was just under the radar the way that it was. And I wish I had watched it myself sooner, but with these other things I had to watch, I kept thinking, well, I'm going to get back to Reginald, and then we kept saying we're going to do this panel, and here we are, finally getting to Reginald. And I do want to mention, by the way, I think this is either panel 97 or 98.
Wow.
A track YouTube channel since 2020. So
congrats.
Well, thank you. Congrats to all of you who have been part of that journey. And Rocky, I've got to say, you've been one of our biggest supporters in person at Con as well all this time. So thank you very much. We appreciate that.
It's a pleasure. I'm always happy to help.
Yeah. Well, we do appreciate it. We've got, unless anybody has anything else they would like to say about the show or any other things you want to discuss.
I would like to say two things. I would like to say one,
okay, sure.
I'm glad I did this panel because I wasn't going to at first. I was kind of like, I don't know why. I like Johnny's writing, but for some reason never read Fat Vampire. And some reason I miss a lot of Sci-Fi Channel stuff because I don't have cable, and then their streaming, way they distribute streaming is not very good, I don't think, for sci-fi. It gets lost in the jumble of other stuff. But I'm so glad I watched it because it's so good. I really wish I'd caught it earlier. Like Julie, who's was my wife, was on one panel one time ago. She was like, I really like this. This is like one of my favorite shows now. And it's like, oh yeah, it's canceled, but okay.
yeah, don't get too excited, honey. Yeah, you're not going to see it
about
that. Yeah. So I was really surprised how good it was. I'm sorry. I really think it deserved a season 3. I think it grew into a really good show. And then the other thing I want to do is I want to ask Rocky, if you don't mind.
No.
Do you remember what happens in, like, what's his vampire war? What would have happened? Like a rough.
I cannot remember. I've read them when they first came out, and I like the Balstro lines about the 30 days is in the book too. Because when he said that, I was like, wow, that's almost like line for line what he says in the books. But it's been so long, I cannot remember.
Okay.
You'll have to tell us
Now,
once you
Yeah.
read the books.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe me too. I mean, I'm more interested in that now. I knew I had remembered that it was based on a series, but until I, started watching them a few weeks ago,
Cool.
I didn't remember what it was, what the series was. And I was when we first got here, I was telling Marks, I said, I think they were also wise to title it what they did and not call it The Fat Vampire, because that would have been,
I do remember they had like they actually had vampire hunters in the books, which they really didn't have in the show. There's like a book where it's just them versus vampire hunters. I do remember that plot point is one of the books. So
Cool.
Gee.
Who knows? I have one thing
Sure.
I have to tell you, because I finally found it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
That Maurice's mother lived in Portland.
It was Portland. I was right.
They left like Oakland, and he like took Angela to like meet his mother in Portland.
Right. Okay. That's what I thought it was, but I could not find it in my.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Anna.
And that bringing up that reminds me. I thought setting the show in Akron was also a great idea. Is that where it's set in the books?
I can't remember.
I don't remember.
Because I mean, it makes perfect sense, and it's kind of like it's not one of the more exotic locations that you often get when it comes to stories about vampires, but certainly it fits, because if you're gonna be somebody who can't go out in direct sunlight, it's probably better to go somewhere where you might be able to go out in the daytime with lots of umbrellas. That was crazy. But now, does anybody else kind of want a parasol now? I don't know.
I know. I made him cool.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, if that was funny, Reginald going around with Nickies, but
it makes me feel certain that Michael Jackson was a vampire.
That's right. But yeah, I think we're all in agreement that we would have enjoyed more Reginald.
Yes.
And
yes,
for sure.
I do wish that the show had more of it, that at the time it would have had more of an audience, and or was at least something that people had heard of, because a lot of people told me I've never even heard of it, and I'm like, well, I mean, I'd heard of it. I hadn't seen it yet, except for the first episode.
That's what most people have said when I mention it too, is that they didn't even hear about it. And even when I was trying to find the answer to the question, like normally fandom, wiki will come in and be real good. But the fandom wiki didn't even have his mother's name listed, which is like,
come on, fandom.
Not enough fans out there updating the fandom wiki. So everybody go watch Reginald, even though there's only 2 seasons, and you're going to be sad.
There's still 2 awesome seasons.
Yes, two very awesome seasons.
Oh yeah, and it does. Okay, yeah, it does say Portland in my notes, but I was looking for it at the beginning of when they went somewhere, and it says, okay, so I had it that he wanted to go to see his mom in Portland. So anyway, I'm sorry you went to all that trouble, but now you know that the fandom wikis are no good for Reginald.
Nobody's seen it.
Yeah.
Hey, we have.
Yes. But I want to thank you guys for doing this tonight. I really, really appreciate it. And as I said, Anna and I have been talking about it. We need to do Reginald, and it's like, well, it's getting close to con again, and all of that. But I do appreciate you guys taking part, and I do appreciate anyone who happens to be watching this discussion right now, or anyone who watches it later. We appreciate all of you. Thank you very much. And as everybody knows, Dragon Con is coming up very soon, but I do have a couple of other things coming up. Probably in early August, there will be a virtual panel over the Old Guard movie. In collaboration with the American fantasy and sci-fi track. We will media track. We will be doing something about it. We did one during the pandemic because that's when it came out, the first one. So we're going to do a follow-up because neither of us is pretty sure. We can't do it together during con because we're both too busy. So we're going to do a virtual panel so that we can do it together, before con. So we've got that coming up, and we do have a couple of other author interviews that will go up before con proper. I'm not going to say who, but it's going to be fun. So I hope that people will tune into those, and we appreciate everyone's support of the track and of this channel. So thanks very much, everyone, and we will say good night for now.
Good night.
Night.
Good night, all.